A poor girl walks into a hospital and asks the billionaire, "Sir, can you tell me if there is a cure for missing someone? My mother is gone, and it hurts so much in my chest whenever I long for her." But when he answers, everyone is moved to tears. Emily, at 4 years old, walked through the glass doors of the clinic by herself. The place was huge, with a high ceiling and lights that glittered like the stars she watched from her bedroom window at night. Even though she was afraid, she kept going. Her mother always said that courage wasn't about not feeling fear, but about doing what needed to be done even when you were scared. Her brown curls bounced with each step. She wore a blue dress with small embroidered flowers, slightly wrinkled. On her wrist was a little bracelet made of colorful beads that her mother had crafted just a few weeks before. The marble floor reflected her image as she walked. Horizon Clinic was the most beautiful place Emily had ever seen. Well-dressed people hurried by, carrying folders and talking on cell phones. Nobody seemed to notice the small girl weaving among them. Emily reached the main desk. It was so tall that she could hardly see over the top. She stood on her tiptoes, holding onto the edge with her tiny hands. A man in a dark suit had his back turned, organizing some papers. His hair was perfectly combed, not a single strand out of place. "Excuse me," Emily said, her voice nearly a whisper. The man didn't hear her. She tried again, a bit louder. "Excuse me, sir." He turned around. His grey eyes were serious, like a stormy sky. He had a handsome face, but it looked as if he'd forgotten how to smile a long time ago. "Can you tell me if there's a cure for missing someone?" Emily asked, her high-pitched voice echoing in the suddenly silent space. "My mum is gone, and my chest hurts so much when I miss her." The people around stopped what they were doing. Phones were forgotten in their hands. Conversations died mid-sentence. Everyone watched this unexpected scene. A 5-year-old girl and a man in a suit, separated only by a counter, brought together by a question nobody knew how to answer. The man was no ordinary receptionist. He was Michael Carter, owner of Horizon Clinic and dozens of other businesses across the country. His name often appeared in business magazines, and his fortune was counted in the billions. People respected and feared him in equal measure, because his intelligence was surpassed only by his cold demeanor. Michael looked at the girl as though he were seeing a ghost. For a moment, it seemed he was going to turn away or call security. But then, something happened that no one in that clinic had ever witnessed. Michael Carter walked around the counter and knelt down in front of little Emily. They were now face to face. He, a 40-year-old man, marked by sleepless nights and stressful meetings, and Shigi, a 5-year-old child already carrying a sorrow that was too big. "What's your name?" he asked, his normally steady voice now softer. "Emily," she answered, clutching the small teddy bear she carried under her arm. "Emily," Michael repeated, as if testing how the name sounded. "Where is your family?" She hugged the teddy bear against her chest. "Now it's just me and Mr. Hugs." Michael swallowed hard. He felt something he hadn't felt in years: empathy. Without thinking twice, he took Emily's small hands in his. "Longing, my little one, doesn't have a cure," he said, his voice choked. Emily lowered her head, her lips trembling slightly. A tear fell onto her blue dress, creating a small dark stain. Michael felt something break inside him. He remembered himself years ago, when he lost his wife. How he spent sleepless nights wondering how he would go on, how, little by little, he replaced pain with work until he felt nothing at all. "But there is a remedy," he continued, gently lifting Emily's chin. "The love your mother left inside you never disappears. It lives in your heart. And you know what else?" Emily shook her head, looking at him with renewed hope. "Whenever you miss her, look up at the sky. Your mom is there in the stars. They twinkle because they want to show they're watching over you." An assistant who had been watching wiped her eyes discreetly with a tissue. A doctor passing by stopped, moved by his words. "When your chest hurts," Michael went on, "close your eyes and hug the air really tight. She'll be right there in that hug." Emily closed her eyes, her small arms wrapped around the empty air in front of her, squeezing as if someone were actually there. Her breathing, previously quick and nervous, became calm. A faint smile appeared on her lips. The clinic staff, men and women used to crises and emergencies, watched the scene with heavy hearts. Some discreetly wiped away tears, others smiled tenderly. They all knew they were witnessing something rare, a moment of pure humanity. Michael felt something wet on his own face. He touched his cheek and realized he was crying. He, who hadn't shed a tear since his wife's funeral, was crying now in front of strangers, in front of employees who had always seen him as a man of steel. In that moment, he wasn't billionaire Michael Carter. He was just a man who also knew the pain of losing someone, who understood what it was like to miss someone who would never come back. "Are you here alone, Emily?" he asked, looking around for any adult who might be with her. Emily hugged her teddy bear more tightly. "I live by myself, since my mom left, but I know how to manage." Michael frowned, confused. "Alone? But you're only 4 years old." "What do you mean, alone?" "My mom taught me how to make food and dress myself," Emily said simply, as if it were normal for a child her age to live on her own. "There's a lady who comes by sometimes, but she's sick now." Michael couldn't believe what he was hearing. A 5-year-old child living alone. It was impossible, dangerous, and illegal. Yet something about the way Emily spoke, with that mixture of innocence and forced maturity, told him she was telling the truth. "How did you get here today?" he asked, still trying to make sense of the situation. "I walked. It's not too far from home. The lady who comes to see me sometimes said that there were doctors here who could help anyone." Michael was impressed by the girl's independence and at the same time horrified by what she was going through. Such a young child shouldn't be walking alone around the city, let alone living without supervision. "Can I tell you a secret?" Emily asked, leaning closer to Michael's ear. "Sure," he replied. "My mom went to sleep forever last week. Miss Joyce said she's in heaven now, but I wanted to know if there's a cure for missing someone." Michael felt an even tighter squeeze in his chest. Her loss was so recent. Emily had barely begun to process what had happened. The pain was still raw, the wound open. "I understand," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You were very brave to come here." Emily smiled, a small but genuine smile. "My mom always said I was a warrior. Michael couldn't let this child go back alone. Not now, not after discovering she had just lost her mother and apparently had no one properly caring for her. Something needed to be done. "Would you like to have some ice cream with me before you go back?" he asked, surprising even himself with the invitation. Emily's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Of course," Michael replied. "Afterwards, I'd like to see where you live. Is that okay?" Emily thought for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, I can show you Mum's things. I keep everything safe." He stood up and offered his hand to Emily, who took it without hesitation. The trust this child placed in him, a stranger, made Michael feel a responsibility he hadn't felt in a long time. "Mr. Carter," called his assistant, clearly confused. "You have a meeting in 15 minutes with the Japanese investors." Michael looked at the small hand holding at the worn-out teddy bear, and at Emily's hopeful eyes. Then he looked at his assistant. "Cancel all my appointments for the rest of the day, Sarah. I have something more important to do." Sarah nodded, surprised but understanding. In 8 years working for Michael Carter, she had never seen him cancel a meeting. She had never seen him cry. She had never seen him smile the way he did now, looking at that little girl. "And Sarah," he added after a moment's thought, "call social services. We need to check on this child's situation. But do it discreetly, please." Michael and Emily left the clinic together, hand in hand. He, the man who ran an empire built on meticulous calculations and pragmatic decisions. She, the girl who had crossed the city alone in search of a cure for a newly discovered pain. Neither of them knew it, but that unexpected meeting would change their lives forever. For Michael, it was a chance to rediscover feelings he thought he'd lost. For Emily, it was the start of a new chapter, where the pain of loss might share space with new joys. As they walked into the sunny street, a gentle breeze blew between them. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, as if sensing something. "My mom is happy," she said simply. Michael looked up at the cloudless blue sky. For a moment, he allowed himself to believe it was true, that Emily's mother was watching them, that perhaps it wasn't a coincidence that this girl had come into his clinic exactly when he was there, exactly when he had started to wonder if his life had any purpose beyond accumulating money and power. "I think she is, Emily," he replied. "I think she is." And for the first time in years, Michael gave a genuine smile. After they had ice cream at a small shop near the clinic, Emily's face was smeared with chocolate. Michael took a napkin and gently wiped the corner of her mouth. She smiled, one of those rare smiles that lit up her eyes. For a moment, she looked like a normal child enjoying ice cream on an ordinary afternoon. But reality was different. The ice cream was finished, and the shadow returned to Emily's eyes. Michael realized it was time to learn more about this little girl's circumstances. "Where is your family, Emily?" "Is someone coming to pick you up?" he asked in a gentle voice, leaning forward to be at her level. The girl shook her head, her brown curls bouncing slightly. "I live alone. My mom is gone, and there's no one left. But I know how to manage." The words came out so naturally that it hurt even more. Michael felt a pang in his chest. How could a 5-year-old child think it was normal to live alone? "What about your dad?" Michael tried. "I don't have a dad," Emily said, fiddling with Mr. Hugs. "Mom said he left before I was born." "And no grandparents, aunts, uncles?" Emily shrugged. "I don't know, I've never seen them." Michael took a deep breath. Each answer was worse than the last. The girl was completely unprotected, with no support network. "How do you eat? Who buys groceries?" "There's stuff in the pantry. Miss Joyce bought it before she got sick. And I know how to make a sandwich." Michael paused for a moment, knowing he should call social services immediately. The situation was dire. But something about this girl, about the way she looked at him with trust, made him choose differently. "I'll take you home today. Come on," he said, grabbing his car keys. Emily took his hand without question, as though it was the most natural thing in the world to trust a stranger she'd just met. That only increased Michael's concern. What could happen to such a vulnerable child in a world so full of cruel people? In the car, a sleek black sedan, Emily settled into the back seat. Michael adjusted her seatbelt, noticing how small she was. As he drove, he watched her in the rearview mirror. Emily gazed out the window in awe, pointing things out along the way. "There's a toy store over there," she exclaimed. "And look at that dog." Her excitement over simple things contrasted with the gravity of her situation. Emily began talking about her daily routine as if describing a normal life. "In the morning, I wake up and eat cereal. Then I play with Mr. Hugs. Sometimes I watch TV. Miss Joyce said I can't leave the house, but yesterday I had to go to the clinic." "Do you go to school, Emily?" Michael asked, dreading the answer. "No. Mom said I'd start when I was older." "And Miss Joyce? Who is she?" "She's our neighbor. She looked after me when Mom went to work. But now she has a bad leg and can't come upstairs to my apartment." Michael gripped the steering wheel tightly. The situation was even worse than he had imagined. An elderly neighbor occasionally checking in on the girl was not enough. It was neglect, even if unintentional. "Where do we go now?" he asked. "Turn right there," Emily pointed. "It's on that narrow street." Following Emily's directions, Michael drove through increasingly run-down streets. The neighborhood they entered was visibly impoverished, with old, poorly maintained buildings. Finally, Emily pointed to a 3-story building with cracked walls. "It's here," she said. Michael parked. The contrast between his luxurious car and the surroundings was stark. Getting out, he walked around to help Emily. Together, they climbed a narrow, dimly lit staircase to the 3rd floor. There was no elevator. "Apartment 302, Emily said, pointing to a door at the end of the hallway. She took a small key from her dress pocket. Michael was stunned to see that she truly lived alone, possessing her own key. When Emily opened the door, a musty, dusty smell hit them. Michael stepped inside after her, looking around with growing concern. The place was small and run down, with peeling paint and a poorly fitted door. Inside there were few pieces of furniture, a table with 2 chairs, a torn sofa and an old TV. There were no decorations, toys, or anything that might make the space welcoming for a child. Emily walked naturally around the space, as if she didn't notice how sad it was. She pointed to a worn-out mattress in the corner of the living room. "That's where I sleep," she said simply. Michael felt a lump in his throat. The mattress lay directly on the floor, with only a thin sheet and a frayed blanket. Next to it was a small cardboard box with a few carefully folded clothes. "Where did your mum sleep?" he asked. "Right here with me." "We slept together." Michael walked into the tiny kitchen. The refrigerator was nearly empty, except for some milk close to its expiration date and a few apples. In the cupboard, he found some instant noodles and crackers. The bathroom was equally depressing, with cracked tiles and a stained bathtub. There was a makeshift step stool so Emily could reach the sink. Returning to the living room, Michael saw Emily sitting on the mattress, looking at something. He approached and noticed it was a small wooden box. Inside were photos and personal items. "This is my mom," Emily said, showing him a picture of a young and beautiful woman with curls like her daughter's. Michael took the photo carefully. The woman had a gentle smile, but her eyes looked tired. She wore a simple uniform, probably from a job as a waitress or cashier. "She was very beautiful," he said. "Yes, and she sang to me every night." Emily continued, showing him her treasures, a used lipstick of her mother's and a floral brooch and some letters. It was all she had left of her family. Michael looked around again, imagining how many nights Emily had spent there alone, staring at the ceiling, possibly wondering why life had taken so much from her. A 5-year-old child shouldn't go through that. Right then, he made a decision. He couldn't leave her here, not for one more day. "Pack your things, Emily." "You're coming with me." Emily's eyes widened in surprise. "Where to?" Michael crouched to look her in the eyes. His gaze was firm but kind. "Home." Emily was silent for a moment, processing his words. Then, without more questions, she began to gather her few belongings. She put some clothes in a plastic bag, picked up her beloved Mr. Hugs and the box of her mother's keepsakes. As he watched her, Michael knew what he was doing was technically wrong. He should have called the authorities, followed legal procedures, but he couldn't bear the thought of Emily spending another night in that place or being sent to some impersonal shelter. He decided he would deal with the legalities later. For now, the important thing was to ensure this little girl was safe, fed, and most of all, not alone. When Emily finished gathering her things, she looked at Michael with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, clutching Mr. Hugs to her chest. Michael took the bag of clothes in one hand and extended the other to Emily. Together, they left the apartment and shut the door. As they descended the stairs, Emily glanced back one last time. Michael realized that, despite everything, this place was the only home she'd known. "You'll like my home," he said, trying to reassure her. "There's a room just for you." Emily didn't reply, but she squeezed Michael's hand tighter. In that small gesture lay all the trust he needed to know he was doing the right thing. Michael's car passed through the large iron gates guarding his property. Emily watched from the window, her eyes wide at the sight. The garden seemed endless, with perfectly trimmed trees and colorful flowers in neat beds. A marble fountain spouted crystal-clear water in the center of a circular driveway, where the car stopped in front of the main entrance. "We're here," Michael announced, turning off the engine. Emily didn't move. She kept looking out the window, as though unable to believe what she was seeing. The house, or rather the mansion, was imposing, with a pale stone facade and large windows. It looked like a castle from one of the storybooks her mother sometimes read to her. "You live here?" she finally whispered. "Yes," Michael replied, opening the car door for her. "And now you do too." Emily got out, clinging tightly to Mr. Hugs and her little bag of belongings. Her steps were hesitant as she climbed the marble steps leading to the front door. Michael walked beside her, feeling a strange mixture of nervousness and anticipation. He had never brought a child here before. In fact, he rarely brought anyone at all. The tall, dark wooden door opened before Michael could reach for the handle. A middle-aged woman with graying hair tied in a neat bun appeared, looking surprised. "Mr. Carter, we weren't expecting you so soon," she said, then noticed Emily. Her eyes widened slightly, but her professionalism kept her from asking questions. "Helena, this is Emily," Michael introduced. "She's going to stay with us." Helena looked from Michael to the little girl, clearly trying to understand the situation, but she simply nodded. "Welcome, Emily," she said with a gentle smile. "May I help you with your luggage?" Emily hugged her plastic bag to her chest and shook her head. "I'll show her around the house," Michael said, taking the lead. "Could you prepare one of the guest rooms? The one next to mine?" "Of course, sir," Helena replied, still observing the unusual scene. Michael guided Emily through the mansion's interior. The entrance hall had a white marble floor and a crystal chandelier hanging from the high ceiling. A sweeping staircase curved to the second floor. Everything was impeccably clean and organized, not a single item out of place. "Come on, I'll show you the kitchen first," Michael said. The kitchen was spacious, with dark granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that gleamed as if rarely used. A large man wearing an apron was cooking something that smelled delicious. "This is Mr. Garcia, our chef," Michael introduced. "Mr. Garcia, this is Emily. She'll be living with us now." The chef, a man with a Spanish accent and a kind face, smiled at the girl. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Emily. Are you hungry? I can make something special for you." Emily looked at Michael as if seeking permission. "Tell him what you'd like to eat," Michael encouraged her. "Could I have mac and cheese?" she asked in a soft voice. "Mac and cheese, perfect," Mr. Garcia exclaimed enthusiastically. "It will be ready in 20 minutes. They continued touring the house. There was a formal dining room with a huge table that could seat 20 people, a living room with leather sofas and a marble fireplace, a library with floor-to-ceiling shelves full of books, a music room with a grand piano, and a private movie room. Emily followed Michael in silence, taking everything in with cautious curiosity. The house was so different from the tiny apartment she had shared with her mother that it felt like a completely new, intimidating world. Finally, they went upstairs, where Michael showed her the room that would be hers. It was large, with a bed far too big for a child, blue silk curtains, and a view of the back garden. Helena was already there, putting clean sheets on the bed. "This will be your room, Emily," Michael said. "We can decorate it however you like." Emily stepped inside hesitantly, placing her bag on the floor and Mr. Hugs on the bed. The teddy bear looked small and out of place in such an elegant space. "It's really big," she commented, her voice echoing slightly. "You'll get used to it," Michael replied, though he wasn't sure himself. He had never really gotten used to the mansion's size and emptiness. Helena finished making the bed and approached Emily. "If you need anything, just call me, sweetheart," she said. "My name is Helena. I take care of Mr. Carter's home." Emily nodded timidly. "Thank you. Dinner will be ready soon," Helena said before leaving, casting one last curious glance at Michael. Once they were alone, Michael suddenly felt insecure. What was he supposed to do now? How did one take care of a child? He had no idea, but he knew he couldn't let her return to that dismal apartment, alone with her memories and her pain. "Do you want to take a bath before dinner?" he asked, recalling the grim state of her old bathroom. Emily agreed. Michael showed her the ensuite bathroom with its large tub and modern shower. He left clean towels for her and stepped out so she could bathe in privacy, waiting just outside in case she needed help. While he waited, he picked up his phone and called his lawyer. "Harold, I need you to find information about a woman who recently passed away. Her daughter's name is Emily, 4 years old. I'm not sure of the mother's surname, but they lived in a rundown apartment in the East Side, number 302. I need to find out if the girl has any living relatives and what her legal situation is." After hanging up, Michael fell into thought. What he was doing was, at the very least, legally questionable. He had essentially taken a child without going through any official channels, but he was determined to protect Emily, even if it meant facing legal issues later. Emily emerged from the bathroom wearing the same clothes, but now with a clean face and hair. She looked even smaller and more fragile without the layer of grime that had previously masked her pallor. "Shall we go to dinner?" Michael suggested. They went downstairs together, where Mr. Garcia had set up a smaller, cozier table in the kitchen rather than the large formal dining room. The mac and cheese was steaming on a brightly colored plate, chosen especially to appeal to a child. "I hope you like it, miss," the chef said with a smile. Emily took a bite, and her eyes lit up. "It's the best mac and cheese I've ever had," she exclaimed, with more enthusiasm than Michael had seen from her yet. The chef grinned in satisfaction and left them to enjoy the meal. Michael watched Emily eat with an appetite, wondering how long it had been since she'd had a decent meal. He barely touched his own plate, distracted by thoughts of what to do next. After dinner, Emily showed signs of fatigue. It had been a long, emotionally exhausting day for both of them. Michael took her back to her room and helped her settle in. "Good night, Emily," he said, standing at the door, unsure what else to do. Should he read a story? Sing a lullaby? He had no idea what was appropriate or expected. "Good night, Mr. Michael," she replied, already curled up with Mr. Hugs under the soft sheets. "You can just call me Michael," he said. Emily nodded and closed her eyes. Michael turned off the main light, leaving only a small lamp on, and stepped out, leaving the door slightly ajar. That night, he barely slept. He stayed alert for any sound from the room next door, worried that Emily might need something or become frightened in an unfamiliar place. He woke up several times to check on her, always finding her asleep, as though her body was finally relaxing after weeks of tension and fear. And the first few days were the hardest. Emily barely spoke and spent hours sitting in silence, watching the house's activity with attentive but distant eyes. She followed Michael like a little shadow, trailing him around the house whenever he wasn't working. Helena tried to make the girl feel welcome, offering snacks and trying to include her in small activities, but Emily responded only with single words. Mr. Garcia tried to win her over through food, preparing colorful dishes and elaborate desserts, which worked somewhat better. Michael cancelled several meetings and started working more from home, feeling he couldn't leave Emily alone during such a delicate moment. He set up a small, makeshift office in the library where he could do video conferences and take calls while keeping an eye on the girl, who usually sat quietly in a corner with her teddy bear. On the third night, Michael was awakened by a scream. He ran to Emily's room and found her sitting up in bed, crying uncontrollably. "Emily, what's wrong?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I want my mom," she sobbed. "I had a dream she came back, but when I woke up, Michael didn't know what to say. How could he console a child who had just lost her mother? What words could ease such deep pain? Instinctively, he embraced her. Emily stiffened for a moment, then relaxed and cried into his chest. Michael felt her tears soaking his pajama shirt, but he didn't mind. He stayed there, holding her, until the sobs subsided and she fell asleep again in his arms. Gently, he laid her back down and covered her. He watched her sleeping face, tears still visible on her cheeks. In that moment, he promised himself he would do everything in his power to protect this child. After a week, things began to change. Emily still had moments of deep sadness, but she was also starting to adapt to her new home. Michael noticed she spent more time exploring the house when she thought no one was watching. He found her once in the library, fascinated by picture books, and another time in the music room, gently tapping the piano keys. Michael made a point of including her in his routine. They began having breakfast together every morning. In the beginning, their meals were quiet, but little by little, Emily started to ask questions. "Why do you have so many books?" "Because I like to learn new things." "Have you read them all?" "I've tried, but there are too many." "Some were my mother's." "Is your mother in the stars too?" "Yes, a long time ago." Those little conversations were like bridges being built between them, piece by piece, word by word. Michael bought colored pencils, paper, children's books, and some toys, leaving them around the house for Emily to discover. She seemed fascinated by the colored pencils and soon started drawing. At first, they were just scribbles, but soon became recognizable figures: a house, a woman with curly hair like hers, stars in the sky. During the day, while Michael worked, Emily started leaving her drawings for him. One day, he found a folded piece of paper on his laptop. Inside, there was a colorful picture of two people holding hands, a tall figure, presumably him, and a small one, clearly Emily. Michael smiled and kept the drawing in a special drawer. The next day, there was another one, and then another. He saved them all like little treasures. Nights were harder. Emily still had occasional nightmares, and Michael learned to recognize the signs before she even started to cry. Sometimes, just sitting beside her for a moment was enough. Other times, he read stories until she fell asleep again. One night, after a particularly bad nightmare, Emily asked, "Will you go away too?" The question took Michael by surprise. "No, I'm not going anywhere. Promise. I promise." She seemed satisfied with that answer and fell asleep holding his finger. Michael stayed there for a long time, looking at the little girl who, in such a short time, had become so important to him. After 2 weeks, Michael received a phone call from his lawyer. "I found information about the girl's mother, Olivia Bennett, 28. Worked as a waitress at 2 different restaurants. She died of pneumonia 2 weeks ago. Had no health insurance and tried to treat herself at home until it was too late. There are no records of any living relatives. What about Emily's legal custody? Here's where it gets tricky. Technically, she should have been turned over to social services. There's an ongoing investigation into her disappearance, but they haven't traced her to you yet. A neighbor, Joyce McMillan, reported she occasionally cared for the girl, but she was hospitalized when the mother died." Michael felt his stomach twist. "What can I do?" "Legally, you should inform the authorities immediately, but..." The lawyer hesitated. "If you're considering adoption, I can start on the paperwork. It's going to be complicated, given how you initially took her in, but not impossible. You have resources and influence, which helps. I'll have to cover some tracks." Michael looked through his office door, seeing Emily in the next room absorbed in drawing. In the past weeks, she had begun to smile more and talk more. She had regained some color in her cheeks. He couldn't imagine handing her over to strangers now. "Do whatever it takes. I want to adopt her officially." "Understood. I'll get it started. Meanwhile, I suggest keeping a low profile." After hanging up, Michael joined Emily in the other room. She looked up from her drawing and smiled at him, a small smile, still shy, but real. "Look what I made," she said, showing him a drawing of the mansion with several smiling figures. Michael, Chu, Helena, Mr. Garcia, and herself, all holding hands in front of the house. "It's beautiful, Emily," Michael said, feeling a surge of affection. "Is this our family?" she asked with that direct innocence only children have. Michael hesitated for just a second. "Yes, it's our family." The days passed, and little by little a routine was established. Michael rearranged his work schedule to spend more time with Emily. In the mornings, they had breakfast together. Then he worked while she played or drew nearby. In the afternoons, they usually strolled through the garden, where Emily's curiosity about the plants and insects kept growing. Helena noticed the change in her employer's behavior. The serious, distant man who rarely stayed home now seemed to find joy in small things, teaching Emily to count stars at night, showing her how flowers opened in the morning, reading bedtime stories. The house, once too large and empty, came to life. Colorful drawings were pinned to the refrigerator, toys were sometimes scattered in the living room, and the sound of a child's laughter echoed in the corridors. Michael occasionally found small notes written or drawn by Emily, hidden in his books or work folders. For Michael, from Emily, read one note, accompanied by a carefully colored red heart. Emily's room also transformed. The walls, previously a neutral beige, now had cheerful paintings. A low bookshelf held children's books and a few toys. The bed that was too big was replaced with a smaller one, more suited to her size, with star-patterned sheets. Mr. Hugs gained new friends, a stuffed rabbit, a purple elephant, and a doll with curls like Emily's. Michael found himself thinking less about work and more about how to make Emily smile. When he had to travel on business, he limited the trips as much as possible and called several times a day to talk to her. In his city office, he now kept a framed photo. Him and Emily in the garden, both smiling at the camera, hands clasped together. His co-workers noticed the change. "You seem different," his vice president commented during a meeting. "More relaxed." Michael only smiled. How could he explain that his priorities had completely changed? That board meetings and acquisitions that once seemed so crucial were now just tasks to finish so he could go home, where a 5-year-old girl had probably drawn something new, or learned a new word she wanted to share. One evening, driving home earlier than usual, eager to be part of Emily's bedtime ritual, Michael realized something. For the first time in years, maybe since his wife's death, he felt genuinely happy. Not the fleeting happiness of closing a good deal or buying something expensive, but a deep, steady kind of happiness. Emily had filled a void in his life he hadn't even realized existed. That small girl, with her ability to find joy in the simplest things, had taught him to see the world with new eyes. While driving along the lane leading to the mansion, Michael thought back to the first time Emily asked if there was a cure for missing someone. Now he knew the answer. There is no cure. But there is comfort in forming new bonds, in allowing yourself to love and be loved again. The mansion, once just a place where he slept and worked, had become a home. And when Emily ran to greet him at the door, her eyes shining with happiness at the sight of him, Michael felt he had finally found his place in the world, by the side of the child fate had brought to him. "You're back," Emily exclaimed, hugging his legs. "I'll always come back to you," Michael replied, kneeling to hug her properly. He knew, with absolute certainty, that it was a promise he would never break. Night fell over the mansion, bringing a starry sky. Michael was in his downstairs office, reviewing some important documents. In the 2 months since Emily's arrival, he had learned to adapt his work routine, dedicating mornings and afternoons to the girl and leaving late-night hours for matters requiring more focus. The house was quiet. Helena had already retired to her room in the staff wing, and Mr. Garcia had finished prepping breakfast for the next day. Michael cherished these peaceful moments, knowing Emily was sleeping safely upstairs. Their nightly routine had gone as always: dinner together, a bath, a story, and finally, a good-night kiss. Emily had fallen asleep quickly, hugging Mr. Hugs, surrounded by her new plush friends. Michael rubbed his tired eyes and glanced at the clock. It was past midnight. He decided it was time to wrap up work and go to bed. He was gathering his papers when he heard it. A sharp, desperate scream cut through the mansion's silence. "Mom! Mom!" Michael jumped up, knocking over his chair, and sprinted upstairs. The screams continued, each more anguished than the last. His heart pounded as he took the steps 2 at a time. In Emily's room, he found her sitting up in bed, eyes wide in terror, her face red and wet with tears. She screamed and sobbed, arms outstretched as though trying to reach someone. "Emily!" Michael called, rushing to her. "I'm here, it's okay." The girl didn't seem to hear him. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't seeing him. She kept calling for her mama, stuck somewhere between dream and reality. "Mum, don't leave, please don't leave me alone," she sobbed. Michael sat on the bed and gently touched her shoulder. She shuddered, and finally her eyes seemed to focus on him. "Michael?" she asked, her voice trembling and confused. "Yes, it's me." "You had a nightmare." Emily looked around, seeming to recognize where she was. Then her little face crumpled with a new wave of grief, and she threw herself against Michael's chest, crying bitterly. "I saw my mom," she sobbed. "She was here. Then she started leaving. I ran and ran, but I couldn't catch up. She got farther and farther away." Michael wrapped his arms around her, feeling her small body shake with each sob. He didn't know what to say. How could he comfort a child who dreamed of the person she loved most, the one she'd never see again? What words could ease that pain? Emily kept crying, clinging to his shirt as though afraid he too might vanish at any moment. "I wish so much she could come back," she murmured through her tears. "Why can't she come back?" The question broke Michael's heart. He had asked himself the same thing so many times after his wife died. Why couldn't there be miracles? Why did some people have to leave forever? "I know, sweetheart," he said softly, stroking Emily's curls. "I know." She lifted her tear-streaked face to look at him. "Did you wish your mom would come back too?" Michael hesitated. Over the years, he rarely spoke of his own losses, but Emily needed to know she wasn't alone in her pain. "Yes," he answered. "And also my wife, Sarah. She went to the stars, just like your mom." Emily's eyes widened slightly. "You had a wife?" "I did. She was very kind and beautiful. You would have liked her. She can't come back either." "No. Sometimes, when people go to the stars, they can't return. But that doesn't mean they stop loving us. They go on loving us from there. Emily was quiet for a moment, absorbing his words. Her sobs had calmed, but she still clutched Michael's shirt. "I'm scared," she finally confessed in a low voice. "Of what, Emily?" "Of being alone again. What if you go to the stars too?" The question caught Michael off guard. He had never thought of it that way. What would happen to Emily if something happened to him? The idea of leaving her alone again was unbearable. "Come here," he said, adjusting so he could sit more comfortably on the bed with Emily still in his arms. She snuggled in, resting her head against his chest, listening to the beat of his heart. Michael took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "I won't lie to you, Emily. I don't know what the future holds, no one does. But I can promise one thing. As long as I'm here, you will never be alone." "Really?" she asked, her voice still trembling. "I promise. And besides, I'm making sure that even if one day I have to go to the stars, you won't be alone." It was true. Michael had changed his will, ensuring Emily would be well cared for under any circumstances. He had set up trust funds and designated trusted guardians. He was doing all he could to protect her future. "I don't want anyone else. I want you," Emily said, hugging him tighter. "And I want you, little one. I don't plan on going anywhere for a very, very long time. I'll be here to see you grow up, go to school, learn new things. I'll be here for every birthday, every holiday, every important moment." Emily sighed, seeming calmer. "Can I sleep with you tonight?" she asked timidly. "Of course you can." Michael rearranged the pillows and covered Emily with the comforter. She snuggled against him, holding Mr. Hugs with one hand and gripping Michael's shirt with the other. "Tell me a story," she requested, her eyes already heavy with sleep. "What kind of story would you like?" "A happy one," Michael thought for a moment. "I'll tell you the story of a very brave princess who lived in a castle. She was small, but she had a heart bigger than the whole world." Emily smiled, recognizing herself in the story. Gradually, her breathing grew calmer and more rhythmic. Michael continued speaking even after she had fallen asleep, as if the words could protect her from nightmares. He looked at her sleeping face and felt a surge of love and protectiveness, so intense it almost hurt. In just 2 months, Emily had become the center of his world. The thought of seeing her suffer was unbearable. That night, Michael made a decision. The next day, he would do something special to show Emily just how important she was to him. Morning arrived with a bright blue sky. When Emily woke up, still in Michael's bed, he was already dressed and smiling at her. "Good morning, sleepyhead." Emily rubbed her eyes, momentarily confused about where she was. Then she remembered the previous night and looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry I cried so much," she said. "You don't need to apologize. We all cry sometimes. Even you. Even me," Michael confirmed. "Now, how about we get up, have breakfast, and then go on a special outing?" Emily's eyes lit up. "We're going out. Where?" "It's a surprise." After a hearty breakfast prepared by Mr. Garcia, Michael and Emily left. Instead of the usual car with a driver, Michael chose to drive his own convertible. Emily sat in the back, secured in a special child seat. She giggled every time the wind blew her curls around. "Where are we going?" she asked for the 3rd time. "You'll see," Michael replied, smiling into the rearview mirror. They drove for about half an hour until they reached an upscale shopping center. Emily took in the sights with fascination as they walked inside. Bright stores, well-dressed people, soft music playing overhead. Everything was new and exciting to her. Michael led her straight to a specific store on the 2nd floor. In the window, various stuffed animals of all sizes and colors were displayed, with a sign that read, "Build your own friend." Emily's expression upon realizing where they were was priceless. Her eyes went wide, and a huge smile lit up her face. "We're going to make a stuffed animal?" she asked, bouncing with excitement. "Not just any stuffed animal," Michael said. "You can choose whatever you want and personalize it however you like." A friendly young store attendant approached them. "Welcome to Dream Factory. Looking for a new friend today?" "Yes," Emily exclaimed, still bouncing. "Can I really pick anyone?" "Of course you can, sweetie. Come on, I'll show you our options." Michael watched as Emily carefully examined every animal available. Bears, bunnies, cats, dogs, elephants, Giraffes. After much deliberation, she chose a little white puppy. "This one," she declared, holding up the unstuffed puppy. The next step was to fill the animal. Emily helped the attendant, stepping on a pedal that operated the stuffing machine. Then came the most special part, a small fabric heart to be placed inside the puppy. "Before we put the heart in, you have to make a wish," the attendant explained. "Close your eyes, hold the heart close to yours and think of your wish." Emily squeezed her eyes shut, pressing the tiny red heart to her chest. Her lips moved silently as she made her wish. Michael felt a lump in his throat, wondering what she was wishing for. At last, Emily opened her eyes and carefully placed the heart inside the puppy. The attendant stitched the animal closed and handed it to her. "Now for the fun part, choosing clothes and accessories for your new friend." Emily looked at Michael, as if asking permission. "Pick anything you like," he said. The next half hour was spent selecting an entire wardrobe for the little puppy. A blue hoodie, a pair of jeans, shoes, a cap, and even a tiny backpack. When everything was ready, the attendant filled out a birth certificate. "What's your new friend's name?" she asked. Emily thought for a moment. "Hope," she finally answered. "His name is Hope." Michael smiled, understanding her choice. Hope. Exactly what Emily needed. "It's a perfect name," he said. After paying, they left the store with Emily proudly holding her new friend. Michael suggested they have lunch at the mall, and Emily eagerly agreed. They sat in a cozy restaurant where the girl insisted that Hope have his own seat at the table. Throughout lunch, Michael watched Emily interact with the stuffed puppy, talking to it, showing it things, adjusting its clothes. It was the first time since he'd met her that he saw her so genuinely happy, free of the sadness that usually shadowed her eyes. "Thank you, Michael," she said suddenly, looking at him seriously. "No one's ever given me a present like this." Michael felt his heart ache. How many simple things had Emily never experienced? How many childhood joys had been denied her? "Hope is special," Emily continued, "because he has a heart with a wish inside." "What did you wish for?" Michael asked, curious. Emily looked down, suddenly shy. "I wished that you would never go away. That we could stay together forever." The words hit Michael like lightning. He swallowed hard, fighting back the emotion welling up in his throat. "That's a very beautiful wish, Emily." "Will it come true?" she asked, looking at him with those big, hopeful eyes. Michael reached across the table and took Emily's little hand in his. "I'll do everything I can to make it happen." The smile Emily gave him then was worth more than all his fortune. At that moment, under the restaurant lights, with a stuffed puppy named Hope between them, Michael fully understood what it meant to love someone more than yourself. On the drive home, Emily fell asleep in the back seat, hugging Hope. Michael glanced at her in the rearview mirror from time to time, marveling at how this small child had transformed his life. The fear Emily had expressed the night before, of being alone again, was a fear he too understood well. The difference was that now they had each other, and Michael would do anything to protect this new bond, this unlikely family they had formed. When they arrived home, he gently lifted the sleeping Emily from her seat, taking care not to forget Hope, and carried her inside. Helena opened the door, smiling at the sight. "Seems like your outing was a success," she said, noticing the new toy. "It was perfect," Michael replied, heading upstairs with his precious bundle. He laid Emily on her bed, placed Hope beside Mr. Hugs, and covered her tenderly. Before leaving, he leaned in and kissed her forehead. "You will never be alone again, Emily," he whispered. "I promise." Early morning sunlight streamed through Emily's curtains, painting golden patterns on the floor. She was still asleep, hugging her two faithful companions, Mr. Hugs, worn by time and love, and Hope, the white puppy who still looked new despite rarely leaving her arms. The alarm on the nightstand read 6:28. In exactly 2 minutes, it would go off with a gentle melody, but, as on most mornings, the door opened softly before it could chime. Michael tiptoed into the room, already dressed in his navy blue robe. He turned off the alarm before it rang and observed Emily for a moment. Her sleeping face was peaceful, showing no signs of the nightmares that used to plague her in the early months. Her brown curls fanned across the pillow like a tiny halo. This was his favorite time of day, those few seconds of peace before the world awoke, when he could simply watch the child who had transformed his life. "Emily," he called softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Time to wake up, sweetheart." Emily mumbled and rolled over, hugging Hope tighter. Michael smiled. This early morning reluctance was part of their routine now. "Come on, sleepyhead. Mr. Garcia is making chocolate chip pancakes." One eye opened, intrigued. "With strawberry syrup?" she asked in a still sleepy voice. "And whipped cream," he confirmed. Emily sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes. "Good morning," she said, flashing a drowsy smile. "Good morning, princess. Did you sleep well?" She nodded, lifting her arms for their morning hug, another ritual they had created. Michael embraced her, inhaling the familiar scent of children's shampoo. 4 months had passed since Emily came into his life. 4 months of discoveries, challenges, and above all, a happiness Michael never imagined feeling again after his wife's passing. The routine they had built together was reassuring for both, giving Emily a sense of security and giving Michael new meaning. "I need to brush my teeth," Emily declared, jumping out of bed with Hope and Mr. Hugs in hand. "Don't forget to comb your hair too," Michael reminded her, smiling as she dashed into the bathroom. While Emily got ready, Michael went to the closet. In the early days, he'd had to learn on the fly how to dress a 4-year-old girl. Now he could easily pick out outfits that matched. He laid out a light blue dress and white leggings on the bed, along with a bow headband Emily loved. 15 minutes later, they went downstairs for breakfast. Emily hopped at his side, recounting an elaborate dream about flying unicorns above the city. "Then the blue unicorn let me ride on its back, and we soared into the clouds," she concluded excitedly as they entered the kitchen. Mr. Garcia was already waiting for them, the table set and a stack of steaming pancakes in the center. "Buenos dias, Miss Emily, Mr. Michael," he greeted them, his accent as pronounced as ever. "Buenos dias, Mr. Garcia," replied Emily, who loved repeating the Spanish words she learned from the chef. Michael watched contentedly as Emily settled into her special chair, with extra cushions so she could reach the table comfortably, and placed Hope and Mr. Hugs in the empty seats beside her. Another part of their routine, the plush friends always joined meals. "What do we have planned for today?" Mr. Garcia asked, serving pancakes onto Emily's colorful plate. "Today is Park Day," she said enthusiastically, looking to Michael for confirmation. "That's right," he agreed. "And afterward, we're going to check out the new bookstore, remember?" Emily's face lit up even more. Reading together had become one of their favorite pastimes over the last few months. Michael was consistently amazed by how quickly she learned, soaking up new words and complex stories with surprising ease. Over breakfast, they planned their day. This morning chat was important to Emily, who liked to know exactly what would happen. Michael had learned that predictability gave her a sense of security, something essential after the chaos she'd lived through. "After the bookstore, we can have lunch at that cafe you like," he suggested. "The one with melted cheese sandwiches." "That's the one." Emily bit her lip, thinking, "And then can we stop by the toy store?" Michael laughed. "We're negotiating now." She nodded seriously. "Just to look, I promise." "All right, we can do a quick visit, but remember your birthday's coming up, so no big requests before then." Emily's birthday was in a month, and Michael was already planning every detail of the party. It would be the first real birthday celebration of her life, as far as he could tell. The thought still saddened him, a child who had never had a birthday party. After breakfast, Michael helped Emily brush her teeth again, a daily battle, as she always tried to negotiate skipping this step, and they went out to the garden. While Emily played with Helena, who had enthusiastically taken on the role of a doting grandmother, Michael checked some emails on his phone. His assistant had sent an urgent message about a board meeting. Michael quickly replied, rescheduling. In the early months with Emily, he'd drastically reduced his work obligations, delegating more to his executives. Now that they had a routine, balancing everything was easier, but his priorities had completely changed. He put his phone away as Emily came running up. "Michael, look what I found," she exclaimed, holding a small garden turtle gently in her cupped hands. "Wow, that's amazing," he replied, crouching to examine the tiny reptile. "Let's find a safe spot for it. away from the path. Together, they brought the turtle to a more secluded area of the garden. Emily placed it carefully among the plants. "Will it be okay here?" she asked, concerned. "Yes, it will. Turtles are tough, and if they feel in danger, they can hide in their shells." Emily seemed satisfied with that explanation. "I wish I had a shell to hide in when I'm scared," she commented. Michael felt a pang in his chest. Even in the simplest moments, Emily surprised him with observations that revealed her past scars. "You don't need to hide anymore, Emily," he said, holding her hand. "I'm here to protect you now." She squeezed his hand in return, and for a moment they stood like that, connected by that simple gesture. That night, after a busy day, they followed their usual bedtime routine. A bath, with lots of bubbles and little toy boats, pajamas, teeth brushing, and finally their favorite part, story time. Emily was already in bed, surrounded by her stuffed friends, with a new book waiting on the nightstand. Michael sat beside her as he did every night. "Ready for the story?" "Yes," she exclaimed, snuggling closer. "But first, can I ask you something?" "Of course." Emily hesitated, fiddling with the edge of the blanket. "Today, at the park, I saw some boys playing with their dad." Michael nodded, remembering the scene, a man playing ball with two boys, all laughing and having fun. "And I was thinking," she went on, still not meeting his eyes, "are you my dad now?" The question caught Michael off guard. They'd never explicitly discussed it, even though his lawyer was working on adoption papers. To the outside world, he already introduced himself as Emily's father, but they'd never defined it between themselves. "Well, Michael hesitated, feeling a sudden surge of insecurity. What did it mean to be a father? He thought about his own father, a distant and strict man who was rarely around, definitely not the role model Michael wanted to be. Yet he feared failing, not knowing how to be the father Emily deserved. "I would very much like to be your dad, Emily," he finally said, "if that's what you want too." Emily looked at him with surprising intensity for someone so small. "Can I call you Dad?" Such a simple question, but its impact was profound. Michael felt something expand in his chest, a warmth spreading through his whole body. "Yes, you can," he answered, his voice tight with emotion. Emily's smile was radiant. "Okay then," she said simply. "You're my dad, and I'm your daughter." For Emily, it was just that simple. Michael felt a wave of admiration for the way children accept and love without complications. He pulled her close in a hug. "I love you, Dad," she murmured against his chest. It was the first time she'd said it. Those words, so simple yet so powerful, penetrated every defense Michael had built over the years. "I love you too, daughter," he replied, kissing the top of her head. When he finished reading the bedtime story, Emily was already asleep. Michael stayed by her side for a few more minutes, thinking about the conversation they had just had. Being called Dad was both terrifying and wonderful. He felt completely unprepared, yet somehow it was the role he was meant to play. Stepping out, he found Helena in the hallway. "She's asleep," the housekeeper asked with a smile. "Like an angel," Michael said. "Helena, do you think I'm doing the right thing?" The woman, who had known him for over a decade, placed a comforting hand on his arm. "I've never seen you happier, Mr. Carter, and I've never seen that girl safer. Sometimes families form in the most unexpected ways." Michael nodded, grateful for her simple wisdom. "She called me Dad today," Helena smiled. "And that's exactly what you are. Maybe not by blood, but by choice, and that is even more meaningful." Later, in his office, Michael reviewed some documents his lawyer had sent. The adoption process was moving forward, but there were still hurdles. The way he had brought Emily home initially complicated things. However, the lawyer was optimistic. Michael's financial stability, reputation, and Emily's obvious well-being worked in their favor. He looked at the framed photo on his desk, him and Emily in the garden, both smiling. Before she arrived, his desk held only documents and a laptop. Now it had photos, drawings, small notes written in a child's scrawl. His entire life had changed. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was his assistant. reminding him of an important video conference scheduled for the next day. "I need to reschedule," Michael said. "Tomorrow is Emily's annual checkup with the doctor." There was a pause on the other end. "Sir, that meeting has been on the calendar for weeks. It's about the merger with Tech Corp." Before Emily, Michael would have cancelled any personal commitment for a meeting of that magnitude. The merger involved millions in new business. But now, "My daughter's health comes first," he said firmly. "Rearrange it for Thursday." After hanging up, Michael realized just how much his life had changed. His values, his priorities, even the way he saw himself in the world. Everything was different now, and he didn't miss the old life. The solitary existence focused solely on business and money now seemed hollow. Emily had brought color and meaning to a world he hadn't realized was black and white. Michael shut the files, turned off his laptop, and went upstairs to check on Emily one last time before bed. Another ritual he found essential. She was sleeping peacefully, an arm around Mr. Hugs and another around Hope. Michael adjusted the blanket and kissed her forehead lightly. "Good night, my daughter," he whispered. The word daughter still felt new on his lips, yet at the same time it felt like it had always been there, waiting for the right moment to be spoken. Morning came, and Emily was nervous. Dressed in her new uniform, she looked at her reflection in the mirror, biting her lower lip. The pleated navy skirt, the white shirt with the school emblem, and the shiny black shoes felt strange after being used to simple, comfortable clothes. Her curls, usually loose and rebellious, were now tied in two carefully made braids by Helena. Michael noticed her unease and knelt beside her. He was also anxious, though he tried not to show it. This was a big step for both of them. "Are you ready for this new adventure?" he asked with an encouraging smile. Emily hesitated before answering, her fingers nervously playing with the edge of her shirt. "What if nobody likes me? What if I don't know what to say?" Michael held her small hands, speaking gently. "Every beginning is scary, but you are amazing. Give people time to get to know you. I'm sure you'll make friends." Emily took a deep breath and nodded. There was courage in her eyes, despite her fear. Michael recognized that determination. It was the same that had brought her to his clinic that first day, asking if there was a cure for missing someone. Breakfast was quiet. Emily barely touched her food, pushing pieces of pancake around her plate. Michael didn't force her, understanding her stomach was probably as full of butterflies as his own. On the way to school, she squeezed Michael's hand tightly, as though drawing courage from him. The car stopped in front of a red brick building with a large yard, where children ran in all directions. Parents said goodbye to their kids, some with tears in their eyes, others taking photos to mark the moment. Michael felt a wave of emotion at realizing he was one of them now, a father dropping his daughter off at school for the first time. "Remember, I'll be waiting right here when you finish," he said, crouching down to her level. Emily hugged him tightly, whispering "I love you" before pulling away. Michael watched as she walked toward the classroom, a small figure with a backpack almost as big as she was. At the door, she turned back one last time and waved timidly. He waved back, forcing a reassuring smile. His heart ached as he watched her disappear down the corridors. For the first time, he wouldn't be around to protect her. Would she be okay? What if the other kids were mean? What if she felt lost or scared? Michael stayed by the gate for a few more minutes, even after the other parents had left. Finally, he made himself go, heading to his office, but he couldn't concentrate. Every few minutes, he checked the clock, trying to imagine what Emily was doing. During recess, Emily sat alone in a corner of the yard. The lunch Helena had packed, a cheese sandwich and a bag of sliced apples, lay untouched beside her. Other children ran around in groups, laughing and sharing secrets, but no one approached her. Emily hugged her knees, feeling that old loneliness tug at her chest. For a moment, she thought of her mom, then of Michael, wishing one of them could be there. She watched the other girls playing and wondered how to join them. Suddenly, a curly-haired girl approached her, smiling openly. "Hi, I'm Sophie. Do you want to play with me?" Emily looked up, hesitating before smiling back. "Yes, I do." Sophie led her to a group of kids playing tag. Emily, shy at first, soon found herself running and laughing with the others. Her morning fears began to melt away in the simple joy of just being a child at play. At the end of the day, Michael waited anxiously at the gate. He had spent the entire day distracted, worried about how Emily was adjusting. When he saw her running toward him with a shy smile, he felt immense relief. "How was it?" he asked, crouching down to hug her. Emily thought for a moment before answering, as though recalling her day. "It was strange at first, but I made a friend." Michael smiled and ruffled her hair. "I knew you could do it." On the drive back, Emily talked about Sophie, about the kind teacher who read the class a story, and about how she answered a question about animals correctly. Her voice, once hesitant, was now filled with excitement. They arrived home, and Michael realized that, little by little, Emily was finding her place in the world, not just in his house or in his heart, but out there where she would grow up and become the extraordinary person he already saw in her. In the following weeks, Emily adapted more and more to her school routine. The nervousness of the early days vanished, replaced by eager anticipation. Sophie became a constant companion, sometimes visiting the mansion on weekends. Michael watched with satisfaction as Emily blossomed in this new friendship. One Thursday, Emily came home with a special sparkle in her eyes. She raced to the living room table and pulled out 2 carefully folded pieces of paper from her backpack. "Michael, look what I made at school today," she said, offering him the drawings. Michael took the papers, and his heart tightened at the first one. It was childlike but full of detail, showing Emily next to a woman with long hair. In the corner, there was a small heart with the word Mom. "You drew your mother," he murmured, feeling a lump in his throat. "Yes, I wanted to remember her. But I also made another one," Emily said excitedly, handing him the second drawing. This time, Michael recognized himself portrayed. He stood next to Emily, holding her hand with a bright sun in the background. At the top, in childlike letters, were the words, "My new family." Michael felt a painful squeeze in his chest as warmth flooded his heart. He blinked back tears, struggling to hold his emotions. After a long silence, Emily noticed the mist in his eyes, and with a caring smile, she pulled something else from her backpack. "Our teacher asked us to bring something important to us," she explained, "something that makes us happy." As she handed him her drawings, a small piece of paper slipped out of the backpack and fell to the floor. Michael bent down to pick it up and felt a chill as he recognized an old photo. "Look, Michael, my teacher asked for something important, so I brought this photo of my mom." Michael took the picture and felt his world stop for an instant. His heart pounded as he recognized the woman in the photo. This wasn't just someone who resembled a person he once knew. He knew her very well, all too well, Olivia Bennett. Not as he had met her at a cafe years later, but as she had been the very first time he knew her. Young, vibrant, with that smile that lit up everything around her. He had seen this woman before. Not just seen. He had known her. He had loved her. Michael felt his hands tremble as he stared at the image. Fragments of memory flooded his mind. A distant summer, a youthful passion, a painful goodbye. Olivia had been his first true love back in college, long before Sarah, before the fortune, before becoming the cold, calculating man Emily had found at the clinic. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to ask, "Where did you get this photo, Emily?" The girl smiled, not noticing his agitation. "I found it in a little box my mum kept. Whenever I miss her, I like to look at it." Michael kept staring at the photo, unable to tear his eyes away. Olivia looked about 20, the age she'd been when they met. She stood on a college campus, books in her arms, wind tousling her hair. It was exactly how he remembered her. Why hadn't he recognized her earlier when he saw her again at that cafe? She had changed, of course, older, her face more mature, her eyes carrying more experience. And he had been so consumed by his grief for Sarah that he barely truly looked at people. Michael felt his hands shaking. Emily's mother wasn't a stranger. She had been part of his life once, long ago. Now everything made sense. The coincidences, that unexpected encounter at the clinic, the immediate connection he'd felt with the child. Michael looked at Emily, who was watching him expectantly with large, curious eyes, those eyes so much like Olivia's. How had he not noticed? "Michael, did you know my mom?" Emily asked, noticing something in his expression. He took a deep breath, struggling to process it all. How could he explain that Olivia had been his first love, that they had shared dreams and plans before life tore them apart? "Yes, Emily," he finally said. "I knew your mum." Emily's eyes widened, both surprised and curious. "Can you tell me about her?" Michael glanced one more time at the photo before looking at Emily. He knew nothing would be the same after this. This revelation changed everything, or perhaps explained everything. "Let's sit," he said, pointing to the sofa. Emily sat down, clutching her mom's photo to her chest, her eyes never leaving Michael's face. "I met your mom a long time ago," he began, choosing his words carefully. "When we were both college students." "You studied together?" Emily asked, surprised. "Yes, I studied business and she studied literature. We met in the library. I was frustrated trying to find a book, and she helped me." Michael closed his eyes briefly, letting the memories return, Olivia among tall shelves, reaching for the exact book he needed, her smile when she asked if he needed help reading it too. "Your mom was extraordinary," he continued, opening his eyes. "Smart, kind, full of dreams. She wanted to be a writer. Did you know that?" Emily shook her head, absorbing every word as if soaking up a precious story. "She wrote stories for me, but she never said she wanted to be a writer. She had real talent. She wrote poems and short stories that were wonderful. Everyone said she would be published someday." Michael remembered Olivia's notebooks filled with words that flowed like music, stories that transported him to other worlds. Nights spent listening to her read her work aloud, amazed by her talent. "Were you two dating?" Emily asked with childlike bluntness. Michael hesitated, but decided that honesty, though simplified, was best. "Yes, for a while we were 20, full of dreams and plans." "What was my mom like back then?" Emily asked, looking again at the photo. Michael smiled, letting the memories flow freely now. "A lot like you, actually. Curious, brave, always ready to help others." Her laughter. It was contagious. It could light up a whole room. "Like mine?" Emily asked hopefully. "Exactly like yours," Michael confirmed, recognizing for the first time the identical ring of laughter. Emily's laughter, so rare at first but increasingly frequent now, was a carbon copy of Olivia's. "What happened? Why did you split up?" The question was difficult but inevitable. Michael sighed, wondering how to explain adult complexities to a child. "Sometimes, even when people love each other, their lives take different paths," he began. "I was determined to build my company from scratch. I worked all the time, not leaving much room for anything else." What he didn't say was how selfish he'd been, how he'd prioritized ambition over everything, including love, how Olivia had tried to make him see there was more to life than material success, and how he'd been too stubborn to listen. "Your mum wanted to travel, explore the world, gather experiences for her writing. We had different dreams, and they weren't compatible at that time." Emily nodded, as though she perfectly understood adult relationships. "Did you fight?" "Not exactly. It was more of a sad goodbye. We knew we couldn't hold each other back from what we wanted." Michael recalled that final day, the long hug, the silent tears. "You'll regret this one day, Michael," Olivia had said. "Trading moments for money, love for success." She had been right. It took years, losing Sarah, and finding Emily for him to truly understand what Olivia had tried to teach him. And then, "You never saw each other again." Michael hesitated again. Should he mention their brief reunion in that cafe? How he didn't immediately recognize her, how they reconnected, albeit distantly. He decided to keep it simple for now. "Our paths separated. I focused on work, building my company. A few years later, I met Sarah and married her. And your mum, she went her own way." "She never talked about you," Emily said, thoughtful. "It was probably because it happened so long ago. People move on and start new lives." Michael thought about how strange fate was. He had loved Olivia in his youth, lost her, met Sarah, lost her too, and then, by some impossible miracle, encountered Olivia's daughter exactly when the girl most needed him. "Do you think..." Do you think Mum was the one who led me to you? Emily asked, her voice soft and uncertain. The question nearly broke Michael. It sounded exactly like something Olivia would say, that belief in invisible connections, in a universe that conspired to bring the right people together. You know, Emily, I didn't used to believe in things like that, he replied honestly, but now, it's hard not to think there's something bigger than us at work. Of all the clinics in the city, you walked into mine. And of all the people in the world who might have found you that day, it was me. Emily smiled, satisfied with his answer. Mom always said there are no coincidences, only the universe putting us where we need to be. That sounds exactly like her, Michael agreed, smiling through the tears that were forming. Emily looked again at the photo, tracing her mother's face with her finger. I'm glad you knew her, she said simply. Now we have more memories of her to share. Michael hugged Emily, feeling a whirl of emotions, guilt for not recognizing Olivia when he saw her again, sadness for all the missed opportunities, but also gratitude for the present moment, for this amazing child in his arms, Olivia's living legacy. You have her eyes, he murmured gently, and her spirit. The same courage, the same compassion. Emily smiled, a smile that lit her face and reached those eyes, Olivia's eyes. Can I put this photo in my room next to my bed? Of course you can. And if you want, I can tell you more stories about when your mom was young. I do, Emily exclaimed, her eyes shining. I want to know everything. Michael silently promised he would share every good memory he had of Olivia, how she insisted on feeding the birds every morning, how she danced in the rain, laughing like a child, how she spoke passionately about the books she read and passed that enthusiasm on to everyone around her. He looked at Emily and saw Olivia in her, not just physically, but in her essence, in her soul. And he realized the universe had given him a second chance. He hadn't been able to give Olivia the love and care she deserved, but he could give it to her daughter. Let's keep these drawings, then, shall we? Michael suggested, holding the 2 pictures Emily had made at school. I think I know the perfect place for them. Emily watched as Michael placed the drawings, one of her with her mom and one of her with him, side by side on the wall, where soon they would be framed. It was the perfect juxtaposition, past and present, the 2 families Emily had, one she lost and one she found. Thank you, Michael, she said, hugging him again. For what, sweetheart? For telling me about Mom, for taking care of me, for being my family now. Michael embraced her tightly, his heart overflowing with a love he never thought he'd feel again after losing Sarah. Thank you, Emily, for finding me when I needed it most. And thank your mamas wherever she is, for bringing you into this world, for placing you in my path. Evening fell over the mansion, wrapping it in a deep blue blanket sprinkled with stars. Michael remained in his office, the soft lamp lighting the documents scattered across his desk. These were reports from his attorney, Harold Duss, about Emily's adoption process. 6 months had passed since the little girl came into his life, and legal hurdles kept popping up. The way he had brought Emily home, without following official protocols, had complicated matters. Investigations into her disappearance, the search for any relatives who might claim custody, interviews with social workers who questioned whether a single, workaholic man was fit to raise a child. Harold was doing his best, using Michael's influence and resources to speed up the process, but uncertainties remained. The judge overseeing the case was known for his strictness, and the next hearing, scheduled for the following week, would be decisive. Michael pushed the documents aside, feeling the weight of possibly losing Emily. How had they come to this? How had this little girl, initially just a temporary responsibility, become so vital to his existence? His thoughts were interrupted by a soft sound at the door. Michael, a hesitant voice called. Are you busy? Emily stood in the doorway, her curls still damp from a bath, wearing star-patterned pajamas. She held Mr. Huggs in one arm and Hope in the other. Her big eyes, ever observant, took in the papers on the desk. I'm never too busy for you, Princess, he replied, pushing back his chair and opening his arms. Emily ran to him, climbing onto his lap with an ease that suggested daily habit. She snuggled against his chest, the scent of her children's shampoo mingling with the office's wood and paper smell. "You looked sad," she said, glancing at the documents. "Is it because of those people who came today?" Michael nodded slightly. The social worker had made a routine visit that afternoon, observing his interactions with Emily, asking questions, taking notes. Although he'd tried to hide his worry, Emily was too perceptive not to notice. "It's just some grown-up stuff," he tried to reassure her. "Nothing you need to worry about," Emily frowned, unconvinced. "It's about me, isn't it?" she insisted. "That lady with the glasses asked if I was happy here, if you took good care of me." Michael couldn't help but smile. Emily was only 5, but she sometimes seemed much older, picking up nuances most kids would miss. "What did you tell her?" "The truth," Emily said, as if it were obvious. "That you're the best dad in the world, that Helena makes the best cookies, that Mr. Garcia tells funny stories while he cooks, and that I have a room full of books and toys, and that Sophie comes to play with me, and—" "You told her all that," Michael interrupted, genuinely surprised. "Of course." Emily paused, her face suddenly serious. "They want to take me away, don't they?" The direct question caught Michael off guard. He had tried to shield Emily from the legal complications, but he should have known she'd figure it out. "No one is going to take you away," he answered firmly, though his heart clenched at the possibility. "I'm handling it." Emily studied his face for a moment, looking for signs he was just trying to comfort her. "Promise." "I promise." Appearing satisfied, she snuggled closer. "Can I stay here with you until you finish your work?" "Of course you can," Michael said, kissing the top of her head. They sat in companionable silence for a while. Emily absent-mindedly played with the buttons on his shirt while he stroked her hair, lost in thought. "Michael," Emily's voice was now drowsy. "Yes?" "I love you." 3 simple words, yet they never failed to pierce Michael's heart. Emily had started saying them a few weeks ago, usually before bedtime or during quiet moments like this. "I love you too, Emily. More than I can ever say." She smiled and closed her eyes, apparently content with his answer. Within minutes, her breathing was slow and steady. She'd fallen asleep in his arms, safe and secure. Michael remained still, watching her sleeping face. How was it possible to love someone this much? Even with Sarah, he hadn't felt this exact kind of love, one that was both protective and vulnerable, strong and fragile. Carefully, he stood, cradling Emily. She didn't stir, completely at peace. He carried her to her room, laying her gently in bed, making sure Mr. Hugs and Hope were within reach. For a long moment he stood there, simply looking at her. In such a short time, she had changed his life in ways he could never have imagined. Before Emily, his mansion was just a house, big, luxurious, but empty. Now it was a home, filled with laughter, drawings on the fridge, occasionally scattered toys, and the vibrant presence of a child who brought color to a monochrome world. Before Emily, Michael was just a successful businessman, his life revolving around contracts, meetings, and profits. Now he was a father, someone who read bedtime stories, knew the names of cartoon characters, kept a meticulous calendar of school events and doctor appointments. Most surprising of all, he loved this new life. He didn't miss the late solitary nights in the office, the endless business trips, the oppressive silence of his empty house. How had he lived like that for so long? Returning to his office, Michael looked again at the documents. His attorney had been clear. The judge was hesitant. Michael needed to prove he was a suitable father, emotionally as well as financially. "Maybe we should think of a plan B," Harold had suggested that afternoon by phone. "Arrange a marriage of convenience, perhaps. Judge Harmon is quite traditional. He might look more favorably on a complete family." The suggestion had angered Michael. A fake marriage, using someone as a pawn in a legal battle. That kind of cold manipulation had characterized his life before Emily. The kind of thinking he no longer wanted. No, there had to be another way. Michael sat at his desk and called Harold. "Sorry for the late hour," he said when the lawyer answered. "But we need to talk. I want to change our strategy." For almost an hour, Michael outlined his plan. They would no longer rely on his money and influence to tiptoe around legal issues. Instead, they would face them head-on. Michael would speak personally at the hearing, open his heart, and show the judge who he had become, not the cold executive he used to be, but a man transformed by a child's love. "It's risky," Harold cautioned. "If the judge isn't moved, then at least I tried being honest," Michael finished. "That's what I owe Emily." After hanging up, Michael stayed up a few more hours, drafting what he would say in court. It was past 3 in the morning when he finally went to bed, but he felt lighter, more determined. Whatever the outcome, he would fight for his daughter until the end. The courtroom felt imposing and cold on that Wednesday morning. Michael, dressed in his best suit, sat beside Harold at the defense table. On the other side were the state prosecutor and the social worker who had visited his home multiple times. Emily wasn't present. Michael insisted that she stay home with Helena. He didn't want her to endure the stress of a legal hearing, even if the outcome was in their favor. Judge Harmon, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a stern expression, entered. Everyone rose in respect, and the session began. During the first hour, Harold laid out the legal arguments, detailing how Michael had provided a stable, loving environment for Emily, how his financial status would ensure education and exceptional opportunities, and how all the technical requirements for adoption had been met. The state prosecutor countered, emphasizing the irregular way Michael had taken Emily in, the lack of immediate contact with official channels, and especially questioning whether a single, former workaholic man could handle the emotional demands of raising a child. Then came Michael's turn to speak, and he stood up, feeling the weight of all the hopes and dreams riding on this moment. He had rehearsed a speech, but upon meeting the judge's eyes, he decided to speak from his heart instead. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steadier than he expected, "I know I didn't follow the usual path. I know I should have contacted the authorities the day Emily walked into my clinic, a 4-year-old girl asking if there was a cure for missing someone." Michael paused, recalling that first encounter as vividly as if it had just happened. "But at that moment, I didn't see a case for the authorities. I saw a child in pain who desperately needed help. And when I found out she was living basically alone, I couldn't just walk away." He described how in the following months, Emily changed his life, how he learned to be a father by making mistakes, fixing them, and growing alongside her, how he discovered a capacity for love he didn't know he possessed. "Before Emily, I was an incomplete man. I had success, I had money, but I had no purpose. She gave me that. She showed me what really matters." Michael felt the swell of emotion in his voice, but let it flow. "Your Honor, I know you must do what's best for Emily, and I respect whatever decision you make. But please consider this. Emily has already lost one family. Don't make her lose another." Judge Harmon, who had maintained a neutral expression, leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Carter, what do you have to say about the allegations that your work schedule is incompatible with raising a child?" "I can show you my calendar from before and after Emily came into my life," Michael answered promptly. "I've reduced my workload by more than 60%. I've delegated responsibilities, reorganized my company. My priorities have completely changed. Today, my career exists to support Emily's future, not the other way around." "And what about the absence of a maternal figure?" the judge pressed. Michael considered his reply. "Emily has Helena, our housekeeper, who's taken on a role almost like a grandmother. She has Sophie, her best friend, whose mother is frequently at our home. She has her teacher, Mrs. Martinez, who encourages her and guides her. Emily is not lacking positive female role models," he paused. "But more importantly, Your Honor, Emily has love. A lot of it." The hearing continued for a few more minutes, with some additional questions. Finally, the judge announced he would retire to deliberate and return with his verdict in an hour. Michael waited in the courthouse corridor, his heart pounding, unable to sit still. Harold tried to reassure him, saying his statement was compelling, but Michael barely heard him. For the past 6 months, Emily had become the center of his world. The possibility of losing her was unthinkable. When the judge returned, the courtroom felt even quieter and more tense. Michael felt his hands tremble slightly. This was the moment of truth. Judge Harmon looked directly at Michael as he spoke. "Mr. Carter, I'll admit I was initially inclined to deny your adoption request. The way it all happened is, at best, irregular. Michael felt his heart sink. However, the judge continued, over the years I've served in this court, I've learned to recognize sincerity when I see it. And you, Mr. Carter, were sincere today. The judge glanced at some papers on his desk before proceeding. Reports from Emily's school show a well-adjusted, happy child. Statements from your housekeeper, your chef, and even Sophie's parents describe a healthy, loving family environment. And the social worker, despite her initial reservations, acknowledges that Emily is thriving under your care. Michael hardly dared to breathe, waiting for the final verdict. Therefore, it is my decision to grant your adoption request. From this moment forward, Emily Bennett is officially Emily Carter, your daughter in the eyes of the law, as she already was in your heart. Relief washed over Michael like a wave, almost overwhelming him. He murmured his thanks, unable to form more coherent words. Harold patted his back, smiling broadly. Congratulations, Dad, he said. Dad. Officially, legally, completely Dad? Michael felt tears sting his eyes. It was real. Emily was his daughter. No one could ever take that away from him. Leaving the courthouse, Michael looked at the bright blue sky and thought about Olivia, his youthful love, and how fate had reconnected them through Emily. He thought about Sarah, who had taught him how to love unconditionally before leaving too soon, and he thought about Emily, who had given him purpose just when he'd started to lose hope. He couldn't wait to get home and share the news with her. When Michael pulled up at the mansion, Emily was already waiting by the entrance, hopping anxiously next to Helena. Her eyes searched his face, trying to guess the outcome of the hearing. Michael got out slowly, wearing a solemn expression. He walked up the steps where Emily stood and knelt down to her level. Emily, he began seriously. Yes, she replied, her voice small, her eyes wide with apprehension. Michael held the solemn look for another second, then broke into a huge smile. From today on, your name is Emily Carter, and I am, officially, your dad. Emily's face lit up like the sun. She let out a joyful squeal and leapt into Michael's arms, hugging him with all her strength. We did it, she repeated, half laughing, half crying. Michael lifted her in his arms, spinning around as they both laughed and cried at once. Helena watched with tears in her eyes, while Mr. Garcia emerged from the house, drawn by the commotion, a broad smile on his kind face. I think this calls for a celebration, yes, said the chef, clapping his hands excitedly. I'll prepare a feast. Evening turned into an impromptu party. Sophie and her parents were invited, as well as Harold and a few close friends of Michael. The large dining table, usually so formal, was decorated with colorful balloons and a banner handwritten by Emily. Best dad in the world. Throughout the celebration, as everyone chatted happily, Michael watched Emily tell guests how she was now officially a Carter. His heart overflowed with joy and gratitude. In a quieter moment, Emily climbed onto his lap like she often did. Dad, she said, testing the word with a smile. My dad. Forever, Michael answered, kissing her forehead. Emily was silent for a moment, thoughtful. Do you think Mom is watching? Up in the stars? Michael looked at the night sky through the window. He thought of Olivia, who always believed the universe connected people who were meant to be together. I'm sure she is, sweetheart, and I'm sure she's very happy for us. Emily smiled, satisfied, and returned to the party. Michael remained seated for a few seconds longer, taking in the scene. His once empty house was now brimming with life and love. His life, once focused on chasing success, was now rich with priceless moments like this. The road hadn't been easy, and there would still be challenges ahead. Raising a child was never simple, and Emily, with her history of loss and abandonment, would need time and love to fully heal. But now they had that time. A whole life to build together, no longer as two lonely souls who met by chance, but as father and daughter, bound by a love that transcended blood ties, overcame pain and longing, and promised a bright future for them both. The night sky sparkled outside, as if countless stars were bearing silent witness to the bond between Michael Carter and his newly official daughter, Emily Carter, And somewhere, perhaps in those very stars, a mother's heart rejoiced, knowing that her little girl had finally found the love and safety she deserved.